Good evening and welcome to the Connecticut Department of Transportation's Public Information Meeting for project number 58-335, the rehabilitation of the stone masonry wall on US Route 1, also known as West Main Street in the town of Groton. My name is Louis Bacho, and I'm a project manager with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I would like to welcome everyone who's taken the time to tune in for tonight's presentation. We hope this will be informative and we are able to answer all of your questions and concerns so that by the time we are done, you will have a better understanding of our project. Before I get into the presentation and introduce the project team, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items and explain tonight's format. Our presentation will last approximately 15 minutes, and once it's completed, we will host a live question and answer session. You will have three means of communicating with us during the live Q&A session. You can send an email, leave a voicemail, or if you're watching this on MS Teams, you can post your question in the chat field to the right of your screen. The project email, phone, and chat will be screened by the project team during the Q&A session, and the questions asked by any of these methods will be posted to the MS Teams Q&A chat window. We will read all the questions out loud for the project team to answer. You can ask questions at any time during the presentation, but we will answer these during the live Q&A session that follows. As I mentioned, the three means of communicating with the project team will be by email, which is dotproject0058-0335@ct.gov. And I'll also spell that out. It's dotproject0058-0335@ct.gov, or by telephone at 860-944-1111. Again, that number is 860-944-1111, or by chat on the MS Teams live event chat. In this format, you can ask a question by clicking on the little question mark, which is Show Q&A. This will bring up your live event Q&A field. Select the Ask a Question button at the bottom right screen, and a field will pop up where you can type your question and then either hit Enter with a little arrow button to send. You can also check the box at the bottom to post your question anonymously if you prefer. There will be a slight delay, but eventually your question will appear in the featured section with all other questions that are asked tonight. We also have the project webpage link where a recording of tonight's entire presentation, including the Q&A session, will be stored. The webpage will also contain the same information that I've previously explained on how to provide comments or ask questions. And that project webpage is /portal.ct.gov/DOTGROTON58-335. And I'll spell that out and repeat it again. So /portal//POR/TAL.CT.gov/DOTGROTON58-335. Lastly, please remember the comment period to ask questions or provide comments will be open through September 10th, 2020 via either email or telephone. So if you think of a question after tonight's meeting or want to expand on a question asked tonight, you have until September 10th to do so. The MS Team chat function is only available during tonight's live Q&A session. Thank you for bearing with me while I went over the ground rules. I would now like to begin the presentation by introducing the project team. With the Connecticut Department of Transportation, we have Bart Sweeney, Division Chief of Bridges, Robbie Bearcat, CE Bridge Principal Engineer. Again, I'm Louis Bacho, CE Bridge Project Manager, Susan Morneau, CE Bridge Project Engineer, and Matt Giacopoulos, Right-of-Way Coordinator in the Office of Right-of-Way. Matt will speak a little later and provide an overview of the procedures followed by the department for right-of-way impacts to properties affected by this project. I would next like to introduce the team from BL Companies, who is both the consultant liaison engineer and designer for the department. With BL Companies, we have Jennifer Usher, Senior Project Manager, Greg Garish, Project Engineer, and Mike Woods, Senior Design Engineer. We would greatly appreciate if you could fill out a demographic survey the department has through SurveyMonkey. This is only the second or third virtual public information meeting the department has hosted, and for most of the project team tonight, this is our first go-around. The survey will help the department improve these public meetings going forward. There's also a civil rights flyer available. Both links to the survey and civil rights flyer is located on the previously mentioned project webpage. Lastly, I'm required to read this next sentence as part of the Title VI Civil Rights. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the location of the retaining wall along Route 1, but for those that may not, here's a map depicting the project location. Here's a closer aerial view of the retaining wall along West Main Street. It's depicted by the solid white line on the northbound side of West Main Street, just prior to the intersection with High Street and Library Street. Here's an existing general plan of the wall, again looking from above. The existing wall was constructed in 1924 and is 232 feet in total length. The height of the wall varies up to a maximum height of 8 feet as you move away from the intersection. The wall is made up of mortared stone and is described as a gravity-type wall with a sloping back wall. The average daily traffic, or ADT, along West Main Street is approximately 6,600 vehicles, and this is based on the 2017 Connecticut DOT traffic log. This next slide depicts the existing typical section of the retaining wall. This view is looking north on West Main Street or down the hill towards downtown Mystic. The drawing is what the road and retaining wall would look like if a slice was taken through it. The existing travel lanes on West Main Street are 11 feet 6 inches, with varying shoulders from 1 to 3 feet on both sides. The right shoulder is almost completely taken up by the temporary precast concrete barrier curb that is protecting the missing and rusted out metal pipe rail. A 5-foot sidewalk also exists on the southbound side of West Main Street as you head away from downtown Mystic. You can also see the concrete cap that sits on top of the retaining wall that supports the metal pipe rail. Here are a few photos of the existing retaining wall that should help everyone recognize why this project is needed. The larger photo is taken from below West Main Street, behind the retaining wall, and shows a poor condition of the concrete cap and metal pipe rail. You can also see some missing mortar in the joints between the stones in the wall. The other two smaller photos are taken from West Main Street above and show the precast concrete barrier curb and missing pipe rail the curb is protecting. I will now turn over the presentation to Greg Garish from BL Companies, who will explain the proposed project to rehabilitate the existing retaining wall.
Thanks, Lou. My name is Greg Garish. I'm a senior engineer with BL Companies, the consultant, liaison engineers, and project designer. The purpose and need for this project is the deteriorated traffic safety feature. The metal pipe rail has areas of section loss, broken pipes, and missing rail sections. The existing rail also does not comply with current safety standards for guide rails. As Lou mentioned, the railing is currently protected by temporary concrete barrier curb due to its deteriorated condition. The metal pipe rail is anchored to a concrete cap that is out of plumb and out of level. The cap itself has deterioration with areas of missing concrete or spalling, as well as random cracking, seen as the picture here to the right. The existing stone masonry wall also has deterioration and is missing joint mortar over an estimated 25% of the wall surface. The proposed wall rehabilitation consists of replacing the deteriorated existing metal pipe rail and concrete cap with a crash-rated open rail system anchored to a concrete moment slab. The open rail system will meet current state crash test rating requirements and will be 42 inches in height to meet additional safety standards for bicyclists traveling along US Route 1. The concrete moment slab will rest on the existing wall and extend about 8 feet from the wall face towards the roadway centerline. Approximately 6 feet of the stone masonry wall will be removed at the northern end to accommodate a 44-foot long concrete return wall at the intersection with High Street. The sidewalk will be replaced along the south side of the intersection of High Street and US Route 1, and the associated crosswalk will be slightly realigned. The northbound lane of US Route 1 will be reconstructed for the full depth of pavement adjacent to the stone masonry wall. Construction will be limited to the northbound lane terminating at the roadway centerline. Lane and shoulder widths will be returned to conditions predating the installation of the temporary concrete barrier curb. Aerial utilities exist in the vicinity of the project but are not anticipated to be affected by the proposed construction. One construction easement will be required at 89 High Street to perform the pressure grout and repointing rehabilitation work on the face of the stone masonry wall. In this elevation view, you see the full height of the wall with the proposed guide rail mounted on top. A geotechnical investigation was performed on the stone masonry wall to determine the structural integrity of the existing structure. Several borings were taken, and testing of the existing masonry determined that the existing structure was soundly constructed and does not need to be replaced. This is very fortunate, as the wall has been determined to be a contributing resource to the National Register of Historic Places for the Mystic River Historic District. This was established through coordination with the State Historic Preservation Office and the Connecticut Department of Transportation Office of Environmental Planning. The stone masonry wall will undergo several repairs to rehabilitate existing deficiencies while best maintaining the historical character of the wall. The existing concrete cap will be replaced with the cast-in-place concrete moment slab of similar thickness and appearance. The stone masonry wall will be pressure grouted and repointed using tools and techniques to match the existing masonry work. The metal pipe rail will be replaced with an open rail system to resemble the aesthetics of the downtown Mystic area. The wall profile will remain nearly unchanged for 226 feet of the 232-foot wall length. The final 6 feet of the existing wall will be removed to accommodate the concrete wall runout at the intersection with the guide rail mounted on top, which will provide safety for southbound US Route 1 traffic. Concrete return wall will be constructed to resemble the appearance of the existing wall. The typical cross-section view shown here is best described as taking a slice through US Route 1 roadway, and it depicts the width and depth of roadway and stone wall. It's taken from the perspective of someone traveling in the right-hand car who's traveling towards downtown Mystic in the northbound lane of US Route 1. The removal of the temporary precast concrete barrier curb from the right-hand shoulder will restore the travel lane and shoulder widths of the northbound lane of US Route 1 to pre-existing conditions. A 42-inch open bridge rail system will be installed to meet current state traffic safety standards, as well as provide additional sight distance to vehicles turning onto US Route 1 from High Street. A cast-in-place concrete moment slab, shown in dark orange, will rest on the existing stone masonry wall, shown in light orange. The moment slab will extend 8 feet towards the center line of US Route 1. The remaining northbound lane pavement, shown in yellow, between the roadway center line and the end of the moment slab, will be reconstructed for the full depth of the pavement. During construction, the US Route 1 southbound traffic lane will remain open and continue to flow as normal. The northbound lane will be temporarily closed and detoured around the project site during construction. Advanced warning signs will be posted at Elm Street and US Route 1 intersections. Temporary precast concrete barrier curb and temporary impact attenuator systems will protect traffic from the construction area. The northbound lane of traffic will be detoured along State Highway 215, approximately 4.5 miles from the intersection of US Route 1 if traveling from the city of Groton, and approximate 7 miles if traveling the full loop from the project site. The construction detour is anticipated to last 3 to 4 weeks in total. This project is not anticipated to impact any utilities nor require environmental permitting. As previously mentioned, there will be continued coordination with the Connecticut Department of Transportation Office of Environmental Planning and the State Historic Preservation Office to preserve the historical integrity of the stone masonry wall. There are anticipated right-of-way impacts to perform repairs of the stone masonry wall, which entail one construction easement. I will pass it off to Matt Giannakopoulos to explain the rights-of-way acquisition process.
My name is Matt Giannakopoulos, and I am a project coordinator with the Department's Division of Rights-of-Way. It is our office's responsibility to acquire the property rights needed for transportation projects. Proposed project design requires the acquisition of property rights, so I'd like to give a brief overview of the Department's right-of-way acquisition process. Please keep in mind, though, that the specific impacts are still being fine-tuned and may change as the design progresses. Any property rights that will be required will be acquired in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, Sections 13A-73 and 13A-98E. Whenever there is federal money used in any aspect of a project, the Department must adhere to the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970 as amended. Once the design has moved to the point where we are ready to begin the acquisition process, each affected property owner will receive a formal letter of intent to acquire from our office, along with a property map which depicts the exact property rights to be acquired. At that point, our office will determine the fair market value of those property rights and use that value to establish an offer of just compensation. That offer will be sent out to the property owner in writing, and a right-of-way agent will be available to meet with the property owner and explain the project, go over the specific impacts to their property, and explain the state's offer. The property owner will have a reasonable time, typically at least 30 days, to consider the state's offer and enter into negotiations. When an agreement is reached, the states will prepare all the necessary paperwork and record the deed and the property map on the town land records. However, if negotiations reach an impasse, in order to keep everything on schedule, the department may acquire the necessary property rights through its power of eminent domain. In that event, the state files a notice of condemnation in the Superior Court, along with a monetary deposit in the amount of the state's offer. The owner would have 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they felt that the state's offer was inadequate. Whether or not the owner chooses to appeal, the money that was deposited in the court is available to be withdrawn by the owner, subject to the discretion of the Superior Court. I know a lot of people, when they hear the phrase eminent domain, thinks that it means the state just takes their property for $1. However, the owners are entitled to at least the state's original offer of just compensation, and the state only takes title to the property rights that are needed for the project. If there are any questions regarding the department's right-of-way acquisition process, I'd be happy to address them once the presentation has concluded.
Thanks, Matt. This is Louis Baccio again, and this next slide shows our estimated project cost and schedule. We are currently estimating a construction cost of approximately $1.2 million, which will be entirely funded with state funds. No funding will come from the town. I would just like to let everyone know we are currently a little less than 30% complete in the design process. Once design is complete, we are estimating construction to start in 2022, and it will be completed that same year. Of course, the schedule at this point is preliminary and is predicated upon the availability of funding. Okay, thank you, everybody. That concludes our presentation for tonight's meeting. And now I'm going to leave the Q&A session information on the screen for your benefit. And at this point, we will be answering any questions that came in during the presentation or any questions that will come in during this live Q&A session. Thank you.
All right, we'll get started with the Q&A. This is Greg Garish again. Looks like we've got a question that came in on the team's chat. Carl said, what is the impact on the intersection of Library Street, High Street, and West Main Street? Jennifer, did you want to take that one? We're going to bring up a plan view for you guys to see better what we're describing.
Thank you, Greg. Are you able to hear me now?
Gotcha.
So I'm showing here a plan view of the project limits. First of all, I should explain, my name is Jennifer Usher, and I'm the program manager with BL Company. So to answer the resident's question there that Greg just mentioned, the program limits, as you can see, are seen here, and they are delineated by the yellow and orange colors that you see there on your screen. So really the intersection with Library Street and High Street is not expected to be directly impacted. However, I would like to note that during the detour, which is expected to last approximately 3 to 4 weeks, residents that are traveling on Library Street or High Street will really only be able to take a right or left and essentially travel southbound only just during that detour. So hopefully that answers that gentleman's question.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Looks like we've got another question that came in on chat from Terry. All right, the question is, why would the trees need to be removed in order to complete this project? And they don't think that that is totally necessary.
I can take that,
Okay.
that question, Greg, if you don't mind. This is Louis Batcho again, and yes, the department is looking into all means of saving those trees. We realize it's a visual screening for the residents there that live behind the wall, and we're doing everything we can to save those trees. We have determined that we're going to work around the trees for our construction. The work on the wall, behind the wall, is mostly repointing of the stones, and we can do that without affecting the trees. The only way or reason we would take a tree down at this point is if it's unhealthy and unsafe and could fall on the public during a storm event. So right now we're looking at saving all those trees that we can. If a tree has issues with sightline distance, we may have to trim back some branches. But again, at this time, we're looking to save most of those trees. The only way we would take a tree down is if it would be determined to be unhealthy by our arborist. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Lou, and I hope that answered your question. We've got another one that came in through email. A resident noted that he thought that the Mystic Historic District Commission should be consulted in regards to the historic nature of the wall and aesthetics of the area. He does not believe the open rail system is appropriate for the area and that the existing rail should be mimicked. He also noted that the wall further down the road across from Union Baptist Church requires repointing and mortar. Jennifer, like you want to jump on?
Yeah, I can respond to that. So I would like to just let this resident know that we did actually reach out and have communicated with the Mystic Historic District Commission for their comments and insight to the project previously. So we have been communicating with them. I do understand that there's some concerns perhaps with the rail system that is proposed. I will just note that we are at the early design stages, and really the state's main purpose is just to address any safety concerns out here and to incorporate a crash-rated system that meets today's standards. I believe the last item that he had was just noting that the wall that he mentioned was further down the road across from Union Baptist Church. Apparently, he noted that it requires some repointing and mortar. If that is the area that's along Route 1, that's something else that the state could take a look at. But to our knowledge, you know, that wall is in fair condition at this stage. So that's outside of our current project limits, but the state would be glad to just take a look at that.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. And I wanted to note that this wall will be repointed and mortared as well as part of the project. Looks like we'll wait for some more questions to come in. All right, we've got another question that I believe came in through email. Some persons noted that they're residents of Mystic and support fixing the wall and fence on top. However, they have concerns regarding impacts to the adjacent trees, stating that cutting the trees would have detrimental impacts to the tourist economy, as well as the property owners who abut the wall, noting that the greenery provides a visual and noise buffer, as well as a pleasant view. They have asked that the additional consideration is granted regarding impacts to the trees due to the wall rehabilitation project. I think Lou covered this in the previous response. Lou, did you want to add more?
Sure, Greg. Yeah, I would just reiterate or echo what I said earlier. You know, the department is totally understanding of the concern that the residents have for the saving of these trees. And like I said, we're doing everything we can to do that. Again, I'll just reiterate that, you know, the work on the wall, we can work around those trees. The only way or only reason at this point in the design that we would take a tree down is because it was determined to be unhealthy or unsafe for the traveling public or the homes behind the wall. You know, if we do have to take down some trees or branches, we are looking at mitigating by putting some plantings, understanding that any plantings we put back there will not be the same size as those trees that have been there for years and years. But again, I would just like to reiterate, the department understands and empathizes with the residents and with the residents of Mystic, and we're doing everything we can to save those trees. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks again, Lou. All right, looks like we've got a telephone message. Give me a minute to transcribe.
Greg, while you're doing that, I see another message has come in through voicemail or telephone. Resident is asking for what a construction easement is. Perhaps Matt would be able to answer that question.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to answer that, Jennifer. This is Matt Giannakopoulos again from DOT Rights Away. So a construction easement is what the department acquires when we need to use a portion of private property in order to build the project, but we don't need to use that property once the construction of the project is completed. So that property map that I mentioned in my presentation, that shows the exact area of what that portion of property that we need to use is, and it'll also explain how that area is to be used. So like any other easement, it does get recorded on the land records, but once the construction of the project is completed, we file an affidavit on the land records, which extinguishes that easement. So once the project's been completed, the state has no more interest in the property and it goes back to the way it was. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Matt. And it looks like we have another voicemail that just came in. A resident has concerns with the return wall, stating that it does not appear to be necessary and affects emergency parking for many residents. He would like to know what the rationale for the return wall is. Mike, would you be able to respond to that question?
Sure, Jennifer. My name is Mike Woods. I am part of the design team here at BL Companies. The reason for the return wall is we need to eliminate the blunt end that we currently have out there on Route 1. The situation that's there where the existing rail ends, if you have a vehicle that is traveling southbound on Route 1 and loses control and swerves into the other lane, it now has a fixed object to essentially slam into. By extending this return wall, the objective is to move the blunt end out of what they call the clear zone, or where we expect a vehicle to either recover or have slowed down to sufficient speeds to then not have a hopefully serious crash or fatality or anything like that. So by extending this wall, we're creating a safer condition actually at the wall for the traveling vehicular public out there. And I hope that long-winded answer answers that question there. And if anyone else wants to add, obviously jump in there.
Mike, this is Louis Bacho again. No, you're exactly right. I just want to add that the return wall will take the plate or the function, what's out there now, those two sand barrels. That's sort of what those barrels were there for now, to protect that blunt end that Mike was alluding to. So when we put that return wall in, it will help with the sight line. You're not going to be able to, those barrels won't be in your way when you're leaving High Street. The return wall, what we think of is about, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, about 3 feet high. So you'll be able to see over the wall when you're leaving exiting High Street onto West Main Street.
Correct. And actually, I believe those sand barrels are like 50 inches tall too. So it significantly better sightline right there.
Thanks, Mike and Lou. Looks like we've got a couple more questions coming in. We've got a response that it's great news. I think this is in response to the sand barrels and temporary curb being removed, as they're an eyesore. This will certainly clean up the area, as is a gateway into Mystic. Is there any way to accelerate the project? That'd be appreciated. We are looking into accelerating the project. 2022 is what is the current schedule, and we're looking at everything to get this done a little earlier. We'd like to get the project done in the fall to avoid any heavy traffic season. So I hope that answers your question. Anybody else want to add to that?
I'll just add, Greg, just a few words there. We are working closely with the town to develop a good construction season for this. We do anticipate it to be a very short construction duration, but we understand that the town has several different activities that we need to work around. So like I said, we're working very closely with them, and currently are trying to aim for a late fall season to lessen the impact to the overall public.
Thanks, Jennifer. We've got another question that came in anonymously. The question is, the size of the blunt end of the rail does not seem to warrant a 45-foot wall. Why 45 feet? Mike, you want to handle that one?
Sure, Greg. So this kind of comes back to what I was alluding to before, where we have to locate the end of the wall beyond the clear zone limits outlined in all our design manuals that we utilize, and that we have found to be effective and safe for the traveling public. The length of the wall is 45 feet. Yes, that's that seems longer than the 6 feet that we are taking away, but we do have to get beyond that curve there and actually extend this wall slightly down High Street. Additionally, just using standard guide rail that we see on the side of the highway is not an effective way to address this issue on the radius there, or at the intersection, because that has been determined to be not an effective and or safe way to protect that area. So by extending the wall, we're keeping everyone safe and we're trying to, I guess, minimize any additional impacts we may have out here.
Thanks, Mike. That was a great explanation. We've got another follow-up. Terry asked, 2022 is a long time away and wants to know if the removal of trees is something that will be given in writing. Lou, do you want to?
Sure, Greg. Yeah, understood. I mean, like Greg had mentioned earlier, 2022 is sort of a conservative estimate of when we're going to start construction. If things go as planned and the design doesn't have any major issues, we are shooting for, you know, maybe the fall of 21, so that'll be a little bit earlier. Of course, you know, if we're saying we're going to save trees, and something happens between the time, you know, when the design is complete or we're in design, and the tree somehow becomes unhealthy, I don't know if that would happen, but then we might have to change our direction on saving some trees. But as far as in writing, I mean, I don't think we put anything in writing. We'll just you know, mention to the public, or it'll be on the plans. What we normally do right before construction starts, we have a tree warden come out there, and they'll mark any trees that have to be taken down. So they'll probably reevaluate the health of the trees at that point, and then go from there, and they'll tag the trees that won't be touched. Hopefully that'll be all those trees along that route, like I mentioned. Yeah, it's an ever evolving situation. If a tree becomes unhealthy 2 years from now, then we may have to change our attitude on that tree as far as saving it or not. Hopefully that answers the question. As far as something in writing, I don't know if that's the case. We do that. We'll just have to honor our promise, I guess, that you know, when we start construction, we're taking X amount of trees, or we're not touching any trees, and that's what we'll stand by our promise.
And Lou, I can just add to that a little bit. This is Batchinakopoulos from Rights Away again. And this may not be the answer to your exact question, but when it does come time for us to purchase that construction easement, and we have an idea that, okay, these trees can be saved, the trees that are on private property and within that easement area, that would be specified, and the easement would be valued as such. So there would be something in writing that the property owner has given us permission to use the area, but without removing the trees. But that would, again, only apply to the trees that are within that private property. And that commitment would be made later on in the process.
Thanks, Matt and Lou. We've got another question that's come in on voicemail. Follow up to the return wall comment. The resident feels that 45 feet is excessive. This is a tourist town, and parking is at a premium. Doesn't need to be 45 feet. Jennifer?
Hey, Greg, maybe somebody could bring up the drawing that shows the return wall, because I think people are getting confused. A lot of that 45 feet is when we remove some of the existing wall. So a lot of that return wall will be sort of hidden from the public. It'll be where the old retaining wall is. So the 45-foot return wall doesn't extend all the way. I think people are visioning that going all the way down around High Street. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. And I think there's another, the plan view might show it better.
Lou, perhaps I can share my screen over here, and maybe
Sure.
that would be.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. So what I was just, and Jennifer, please, or Mike, jump in. I was just going to say that 44 feet, that starts, that a lot of that 44 feet is still on West Main Street, right? We're removing some of the existing wall.
Yeah, that's correct, Lou. And I'm actually just going to share the plan view over here real quick. Let's see there. Is everyone able to see that now with the plan view? Okay. So So the return wall that everyone's kind of referring to and this resident is over in this area here. And so I understand it sounds like there's a concern because this is a tourist area and it sounds like parking is limited. I do want to just make note that this wall in this area here is all green and it's actually state property. It's part of the state right of way there. So there's really shouldn't be any parking in this area, first and foremost, because there's an existing sidewalk over here that is adjacent and abuts a crosswalk that allows pedestrians and others to safely cross this intersection. So this wall will actually just go right now, as we have it shown, behind the sidewalk on the green area. So it should not impact any parking. So I hope that helps clarify that question and concern.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Jennifer, I'm sorry, Greg. I maybe I can share my screen and just try to expand what Jennifer had said as far as an actual Google Earth shot of this. Hopefully, I'm not going to mess this up, but let me share a screen here 1 second. Okay, so I was just want to just expand what Jennifer's saying. So, can people see my cursor moving? Okay, good. So I think the return wall, like Jennifer mentioned, it's going to come around here if you follow my cursor, and it's going to stop about right here, roughly about right here. I think so like Jennifer said, there should be no parking here anyway. You can still park along High Street down here, but the wall is going to pretty much stop right here. It's going to be 3 feet high, but it'll diminish in height as we get further down here. So it's approximately going to stop about right here. So that gives people a little idea of the length and where it's going to be. Hopefully that helps a little bit. Thanks, guys. I'll unshare my screen and go back to the splash screen.
Thanks, Lou. That was pretty helpful. Looks like we've got another anonymous question. Question and posted anonymously through the chat. What is a clear zone? Mike, you interested in?
Yeah, and I apologize, Anonymous. I should have specified this when I answered the question pertaining to the return wall initially. So clear zone is a defined distance from, in this case, for southbound traffic, it's the distance from the center line or the middle of our road to the closest distance that a blunt object can be. So it comes back to the reason why we're wrapping that return wall around the corner there a little bit, is we need to get that blunt end beyond, and I apologize, I don't know the exact number. Let's say we need to get beyond 15 feet from the center of the roadway there. We need that blunt object, or the blunt end of that return wall, to be beyond that there, so that cars won't run into it. I hope that explanation clarifies it a little bit better.
And Mike, I'll just expand a little bit on the definition of the clear zone that you just gave. So the clear zone is really there as an area or a distance that that they feel that a driver has enough area to recover if, say, they swerved over the double yellow line. You're trying to provide enough area for them to recover the vehicle and bring it back into their lane before they hit or collide with a stationary object. So that's really the purpose of the clear zone. And when you don't have enough of a clear zone, that's when you would see something like a guide rail or an open rail type of system or barrier system to protect that driver from essentially dropping down off of where, say, this wall is, that type of thing.
Thanks, Jennifer. That was a pretty good explanation from both of you. Looks like we are currently waiting to see if there are any more questions coming in. We'll maybe give it a minute. Just to reiterate that there is a survey that we're going to post here. We'll probably post that now while we're waiting, that we'd like everybody to take a chance to respond to. If you have the chat available, it'll be in the chat window.
So as Greg, this is Lou Baccio again. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up unless we have any other questions coming in. But while Greg's adding that survey to the chat, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. I know everybody's got busy schedules, but we really appreciate you coming out tonight. Hopefully you have a little clearer understanding of our project, and hopefully we answered most of the questions and concerns. Again, please do try to fill out that survey. Like I said, I think earlier in the presentation, this is our first go around for most of us in this virtual public info format. So any comments, you know, in negative, positive, whatever, we'll take those and hopefully improve on the next virtual public info meeting. And I do like to remind you too that you can still ask questions. You have till September 10th to ask questions via the email or telephone. The chat will close when we close the meeting out tonight. So if you have any other questions you'd like to ask or want to expand on a question tonight, please do so. That will be open until September 10th. And I think the last thing I wanted to mention too, that this is will also be recorded. If you go to the web page, this will be on YouTube. The entire presentation will be recorded, including the Q&A session.
Looks like we actually do have a couple more questions coming in. So we got an anonymous chat message, and the question is, what streets will be used for redirecting traffic during construction? Jennifer, did you want to answer that?
Certainly. Quinn, would you mind bringing up the slide that shows the detour route so I could speak to that perhaps? So this is actually a great question. So again, I just want to remind everyone that the total detour is looking to be in place really just for about 3 to 4 weeks, and it's only going to be detouring that small section of the northbound lane that I believe is about 250 feet, give or take. So the slide that you see up on your screen right now does depict the detour route, which utilizes only state routes, mostly being State Route 1 and then State Route 215. We do understand that there's local roads and ability for traffic to utilize whatever route they find appropriate, but we will be doing a signed detour that will be using only state routes to essentially take type of commercial traffic and truck traffic away from this area so that it has the least amount of impact.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hope that answered your question. We've got another question that's coming as well. All right, so this is another anonymous question through the chat. The question is, the statement is that the fact that it will taper is better than what I've envisioned. I did not realize it would taper down. I think we're talking about the clear zone. I would like to know when this clear zone law came into being, because the railing was there for decades without any return wall. Jennifer.
So Greg, yeah, I could take a stab at answering this question for this person. So I can't, the clear zone, you know, it isn't a law, but it is a safety standard, and obviously safety standards are improving every day and are changing, and so we're just trying to keep up with the current standards. So therefore we are looking at what has been set most recently. So I can't say exactly when that changed. I'd have to go back and look, but I will just note that they are constantly changing and improving at all times. And so when we do build something and go to construction, we want to make sure that we are utilizing the most up-to-date standards and safety requirements, which currently is what we have shown there.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Greg, I was, this is Lou Baccio again. I was just asked to maybe repeat the email and phone number for those that maybe don't have video tonight for the questions that they may want to have later on after the meeting is closed out through September 10th. So again, the email is dotproject0058-0335@ct.gov, and I'll spell that out. dotproject 0058-0335 at ct.gov. And the telephone number is 860-944-1111. Again, the telephone number again is 860-944-1111. And both of those methods will be available through September 10th. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Lou. Looks like we are maybe at the end of it. Don't see any new questions coming in. They're slowing down a bit.
Okay, I guess I'll repeat sort of what I said earlier. I was a little premature. It sounds like we had a few questions coming in. So again, thanks everybody for attending tonight's meeting. We really appreciate it. Please fill out the survey, and please, if you have any questions after this is closed out, you have those two avenues to ask questions later on. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we answered all your questions and concerns and have a better understanding of the project after we close out. Thank you. So I'm not going to repeat the link, but the survey, it's SurveyMonkey, and again, this would greatly help the department improve on these virtual public infos going forward. So the link is on the screen, and it's also in the DOT webpage. The link is there as well. I'm not going to repeat it verbatim. It's a little long, but again, we appreciate you filling that out if you can. Thank you.